First up is Moonfall, which is the latest Roland Emmerich mega disaster film. And from the get-go, I'm going to be clear with you, it's not a good film. Very rarely are these films good films. But then again, do you go to a Roland Emmerich film expecting a classical masterpiece? No, he's a master of disaster. A lot of his films are just, they're terrible, but they're guilty, or actually shouldn't even be guilty pleasures for a lot of us. I will fully admit that Day After Tomorrow holds a weird special place in my heart. I will watch it almost any time it's on television. It's just one of those things. And, he did help define the disaster movie genre. So the real question is, where does Moonfall rank in the sort of pantheon of this type of film? Should you go see it? Will you have a ridiculous fun time at it? The answer is not as clear, unfortunately. So the premise of Moonfall is that the moon is possibly hollow or a superstructure built by aliens, and that it's coming closer towards Earth. And Patrick Wilson plays a disgraced astronaut. Halle Berry is his former astronaut as well, who's now still at NASA somehow. John Bradley, who you probably know as Samuel Tarly, plays a wild scientist. Michael Pena's in it, Charlie Plummer, Kelly Yu, and the concept alone is absurd, and I think it could have been really fun. It's sort of Godzilla vs. Kong meets The Core, meets Armageddon. It's a template that we've seen done over and over. The actual specifics and the science, it doesn't matter as much, right? It doesn't matter in any of these. I mean, it doesn't matter, but it's a fictional film. Now, it is interesting seeing this film come out the same year as, or in the same time frame, not technically the same year, as something like Don't Look Up, which is a disaster film in its own right, but just the way that the characters react to finding out new scientific information in it is interesting. It's a juxtaposition of how those types of films handle these things. In something like Don't Look Up, it's all about how people are just not accepting of science, and in this, it's that the science in it, the fictional science in it, is so absurd, and yet everyone acts upon it immediately. Anyway, it's not a great one, right? The visual effects are well done. We've improved ways that we can destroy buildings and show flooding and, things crashing into stuff. Okay, yay, good for us. The acting is, Patrick Wilson is actually good. Halle Berry has given great performances. I actually give John Bradley credit for trying to sort of be the most enthused about this one. I feel like he was having the best time on this. I think had these roles been cast with other people, maybe there would have been more of the silly, joyous fun that I go to these films to watch. That doesn't mean that these characters are supposed to be having fun. They're in a world-ending situation, but then again, so are we. So, there's ways to find joy in your job. I think the film's a little bit long. It's 2 hours and 4 minutes. Had it been a little bit shorter, a little bit more absurd, I think I would have really enjoyed it more. Also, it has a PG-13 rating, and there are times where I was like, I feel like this would have been a really good R-rated film. If he had just gone all in, there are selective moments because you're only given a few swear words and a few more adult things you can do in a PG-13 movie. And they use them, and then they sort of try and flirt with them in other moments. And it just sort of makes it for this weird vibe. If they had been sort of a guns a-blazing, all-in moment, swearing at the moon, all this stuff, I think there could have been more enjoyment to be had. Also, I just remember that, technically Donald Sutherland is in this film, and he's barely in it, but he has a very high billing, which should tell you a lot about anyway. So, Moonfall. I think if you're a fan of this genre, it's fine to go see. It's totally fine. I promise you this will be on television or a streaming service soon, and you will be able to watch it over and over and over again. I don't think it ranks in that you're going to watch this over and over because it's just so out there that it's fun to rewatch. But then again, maybe I also, because a lot of these films came out when I was younger, I have a sort of nostalgia for them. So maybe this will be your Day After Tomorrow, or maybe this will be your The Core. Who knows? But it is definitely meant to be seen on a big screen. I saw it in IMAX, and it's the first IMAX film I'd seen in a very long time. I had to switch rows because my neck hurt from staring up. But at the same time, is this worth risking Omicron for? Probably not. But, use your best judgment. Please wear a mask. Please be vaccinated, be boosted, etc. But as for Moonfall, I'm going to give it a 2.6 out of 5. It's not the worst thing I've seen. It's technically watchable, but I do think it had potential to be a ridiculous classic. And then next up, speaking of incredibly formulaic movies, I have a movie called Book of Love, which comes out on Amazon Prime, so you don't even have to stress about the option of going to a theater for it, because I think they knew better. And it's a romance movie just in time for almost Valentine's Day, and it is bad. It's bad. It had potential as well, I would say. It stars Sam Claflin and Veronica Echegwe, and he plays an author who has written just a terrible, terrible book, it seems like, and I don't understand how his character would have gotten a publishing deal based on the snippets that they've read. And then she plays a translator who essentially just completely rewrote his book in Spanish, and it becomes a super hit in Mexico. So then his publisher sends him on a PR tour there, and just, you know how this formula goes. We all know how this formula goes, because if you've seen any romance movie, you know where this is going, and this does nothing whatsoever to try and do anything new in the genre. As with a Roland Emmerich film, you know what you're getting into. And this one, I didn't know what I was getting into, but when BuzzFeed Films came up in the beginning, I had a sense of the quality of this. And I have not seen other films that I know that BuzzFeed has made, but I wouldn't say I looked to I didn't even know they had a studio branch, but it's not a name I necessarily associate with quality. I do think they do some great reporting on their site occasionally, but anyway, when I saw that pop up, I was like, oh boy, okay, I'm gonna temper my expectations. And even with pretty low expectations, it was not great. Again, formulaic as can be. It's basically the plot of, assume, at least like 5 romance novels that have been written that are this plot that surround a writer, and it was very meta in that sense, but I don't know how they did this, but Sam Claflin is a relatively objectively attractive man, and, I've seen him actually give good acting performances. I'm not familiar with her as much, but just the way that they dressed him, he has this atrocious haircut that I assume is somewhat pandemic-y, but I'm also like, well, dude, you're doing a movie, like, let them cut your hair. I don't know if it was a character choice, but it's atrocious. And then they dress him, I get it, he's British, obviously the actor's also British, but, the character's British, he's supposed to be stodgy and stuff like that, but he's wearing, like, a shirt under a sweater and, like, long pants in parts of Mexico that look pretty warm. It's just, and there's not even like an evolution, right? I was like, okay, I get it. He goes from stodgy, stuck up, Brit dude to finding love and all this stuff. No, there's no progression. It's just, it was so cookie cutter. I don't feel like the two of them had chemistry. I know a lot of people are going to be watching this for him. I just took a sneak peek. I don't usually do this, but I looked at like the Letterboxd reviews, and lots of Sam Claflin fans. So people will watch this. It's nothing to write home about. I would not waste my time on it. There are a million other of these cheesy, romance, Lifetime-esque movies to watch. But if you're a big fan of his, maybe you'll enjoy it. But for everyone else, stay away. Stay far, far away. It's an extended Lenovo ad, which is what it feels like. And 2, there's no chemistry or fun or joy, and I didn't sense any sparks with it. So Book of Love, I'm going to give it 1.9 out of 5. And then finally, I have Pam and Tommy, which is out on Hulu. The first 3 episodes have come out. It's going to be streaming weekly from this point onwards. And Lily James plays Pamela Anderson. Sebastian Stan plays Tommy Lee. Seth Rogen plays the handyman of theirs, who ended up being the person who distributed their sex tape. It's got Nick Offerman and Taylor Schilling. And I have mixed feelings about this one because it is morbidly fascinating to watch this thing. It's also just kudos to the hair, makeup, and prosthetics departments for making Lily James, who's a small British lady, look like bombshell Pamela Anderson. Not that Lily James isn't gorgeous in her own right, but just Pamela Anderson is such a distinct looking woman, and they have really done a great job of making her look like her. And then, of course, there's the acting side of it, but just from a visual standpoint, I was like, whoa, she looks like Pam Anderson. And actually, same goes for Sebastian Stan as Tommy Lee. I find his fake tattoos a little bit off-putting because, there's just something about the way they move on the body that doesn't work the same as real tattoos. But anyway, both of them look like what my memory of Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee look like from that era. And that's not to say that they're exactly what they look like, but it just looks like the image and the memory of them. And then if you look into a side-by-side, it's damn close. But there's just something about, I think, the essence that has been captured in a very impressive way. Now, the problem is that I don't care who you are. I don't care how bad of a person you are. Like, you don't deserve to have your sex tape, your private sex tape leaked like that. That makes you a victim, right? And at the core of this, a crime has been committed that, I don't think anybody deserves, especially women, especially women who are victims of revenge porn and things like that. This isn't exactly that situation, but it's just, it's complicated, but it's a fascinating story to watch, right? Because also, it's just the impact it had on, I think, our society as a whole in terms of celebrity sex tapes. Anyway, so it is complicating in that they are trying to make the person who got a hold of the tape and distributed it a more sympathetic character, because otherwise it's just a cut and dry, like, Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee are victims story. So, I have complicated feelings there, and I think the way they're going about it is also a little challenging, because I feel like they're pretending to not be judgmental, but I feel like there's a little bit of judgment happening. It's from Craig Gillespie, who did I, Tonya, and I think he does generally such a fantastic job of capturing these sort of controversial characters who, love them or hate them, they're still fascinating to watch. And for what it's worth, Pam and Tommy is fascinating to watch. And, I have to address the thing that they've been talking about. It's a very adult and graphic Hulu series, so you're going to see a lot of things. And one of the things that had come out in the PR about it was, Jason Mantzoukas plays the voice of Tommy Lee's penis. And when I hear that, I go, what are you talking about? Assuming, I guess it comes from Tommy Lee's autobiography, and, Tommy Lee describes meeting Pam Anderson, having a conversation with his smaller but not so small self and being like, this is the one, et cetera, et cetera. And so they took that moment and they made it into a cinematic moment. I assumed it would be a conversation through pants. But nope. Spoilers, there's a whole on puppeted penis scene, so brace for that one. That was not something I was expecting to see for that amount of time as well. But I think so far it's trying to make them all seem like three-dimensional characters. I don't know how great of a job it's doing. It hasn't finished airing, so, we'll see. And I do think it's important to note, I don't think Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee gave their blessings on this series, so, there's three sides to every story. There's one person's side, the other person's side, and the truth, and I think we are getting a more subjective telling of it because we don't have their side of it. So I think it's important to keep in mind given the subject of what has happened. If you're interested in it, if you lived through that era, if you're okay with or interested in, I guess, seeing a whole lot of skin, Pam and Tommy might be worth checking out.